Test, test. This is a test. Hi. Hi there. I'm Taylor of The Sheepish Goat. You're watching the channel. Today we are talking about becoming your own best friend. It's hard to put into words exactly how important that is and exactly why the depth to that really matters. But we're going to start with me, as I always do, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. We're going to start with childhood, okay? And I want to talk about this because becoming your own best friend comes from the idea of talking to yourself, seeing yourself. That's incredibly important. So I want to talk about my childhood and kind of how I have always interacted with myself, I guess. From my perspective as a kid, I spent a lot of time playing alone. I had friends throughout my life, sure, but I only ever had a couple, and I only ever really had one good friend at a time. If I had anybody else, it would be maybe I was in a relationship, but usually when that happened, those friendships would slip away. And it was always almost one person for me. Even outside of, maybe in school I had more people I was close to, but I didn't really hang out with anybody else. So as a kid, like a little kid, I remember playing by myself all the time. And I've talked to my mom and stuff, and the perspective is that I was needy and wanted attention from people all the time. Wanted to play with people, wanted people to play with me. That didn't really happen. So I spent a lot of time from my memory alone playing by myself a lot. As a little kid, I had a green dinosaur toy box, and I had all my action figures in there, and I would be in my room playing with my toys. I would make little adventures and stories for them. I'd be drawing, be watching movies, playing video games. I used to watch my brother play video games all the time. And yeah, so that was a lot of how I interacted with me in general. It was just me figuring out how to play by myself, how to entertain myself. Well, I wasn't aware of that concept, but getting through every day, basically. But that's what I was doing. Now, as a kid, I had a lot of deja vu. I would get deja vu all the time. And it would be some of my family lives in Wisconsin, so we'd be driving on a trip to Wisconsin, and then I would kind of be lost for a second in my head, and I would see this truck past us on the highway, and then 5 minutes later I see the exact same scenario of the truck passing us on the highway. I had a lot of these weird little deja vu moments, or something I saw in a dream, and then I get the flash in real life of seeing that exact same thing happen in real life. And when you try to explain that to somebody, it always sounds like, yeah, buddy, okay, sure you did. You saw it. You saw it so good. But I remember that very vividly, that I would always get that. At some point that stopped. From my very limited perspective and thinking about it in this moment, I'm going to imagine that it stopped when my parents got divorced, because I don't really remember it happening after that. And that would have been around when I was 7 or 8. Now, in middle school and high school, I remember daydreaming all the time. I would be we would get to school, we would have to wait in the gymnasium, and we would be in little groups, and then they would ring a bell and you would go to your class. I remember that. And I would be sitting in the gymnasium, and I would just be zoning out. I would be looking across, totally lost in something, and where the fuck am I right now? And that's kind of how daydreaming was for me. But I remember doing that all the time if I wasn't distracting myself with art or TV in some capacity. If I was by myself, that's generally what would happen. So talking to myself, or talking to yourself, as I said, is this invaluable skill that I don't think many people have. And I think it's because the idea of talking to yourself is kind of reserved for being insane, which you're allowed to think what you want about me. That's fine. But I think generally you think about it as the homeless guy walking down the city street outside of like Chicago, you know, here's Target, and he's like, ah, and he's talking to himself and totally losing his mind. That's, I think, generally what talking to yourself spurs. But for me, it's been extremely normal and extremely healthy and rewarding. Now, as a kid, I don't really remember talking to myself. I remember playing by myself a lot, like I said. I remember being very imaginative, being creative, so I would like fantasize. Like I remember playing with my friend, and like we would pretend to play Dragon Ball Z, right? And I would be like Goku on the couch shooting Kamehameha waves, and the other guy would be somebody else. Like I remember that kind of stuff, but that's not talking to yourself. It's just general play. So I don't really remember talking to myself as a kid. But as I've come through my depression, as I've worked on myself, I realized how much negative self-talk I had. It's funny because anxiety for me, I never really realized I had. And it's because I was so emotionally shut off. Like I had a lot of emotion, but for other people, I didn't really know how to feel things for myself. So for example, like my brother had a lot of anxiety. My brother had like panic attacks. But I never had that. I didn't ever think I had anxiety and panic attacks. I do. I just didn't know what those meant. That's probably another video. But I have a lot of anxiety, and I would worry about things, and I couldn't sleep like the first night before school and stuff, right? I would be super nervous. And many things in that same vein. So I've always been very critical. I fell in that perfectionist lane of having to be perfect my entire life. Super limiting, super frustrating, super degrading, honestly, because you don't realize how critical you can become of yourself. You put yourself down in this box of like, if you're not this, then you're nothing. And that's generally how it feels. So the talk that I had with myself was just pure judgment. It wasn't constructive. It was, you can't do this, you're not good enough. It's every way in which you can't be, not every way in which you can be. So to the point is when I started going to therapy, even right before that, I guess, truly, right? So I spent like a year and a half working on myself, started a new job, hated it, I've talked about this, and I started talking to myself out of the idea of trying to be more kind to myself. So I knew that I hated going to work. So every morning I walk into my living room right when I'm about to leave. I have a routine of what I say to my cat every day. I say, all right, buddy, I gotta go. I love you. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye, Pookie. Every day. I do that every day. But I have a mirror right by my door. And I look in the mirror and I tell myself, have a good day. You got this. That made a tremendous impact for me because it was just showing up for myself, reaffirming to myself that I know you hate this. It's not forever, but you can do this and you can get through this. It's made a huge impact on me. And moreover, I started being aware of when I would get nervous. This was sort of a way that my friend told me that she had processed her feelings through her own therapy sessions and self-growth practices. So this is how I kind of learned about doing this stuff. So I would be nervous and I would be driving home or something and I would just talk to myself and be like, you're okay. You got this. Don't worry. It's fine. Now, the ironic thing is I've done that my entire life. I've just always done it for other people. I've helped people through panic attacks. I've helped people when they're stressed and sad. I've been the ear, but I've never been the ear for myself. I've never turned it inward before. So in doing this, I got comfortable with myself. I became a support for myself instead of the person that was always telling myself that you can't do this or just do it anyway. Stop being a little bitch about it and just do it, right? Like that was kind of the internal voice I had. So I started talking to myself. And the real way that I really started talking to myself is, again, I started this job. I didn't like this job. This job felt like it took from me. And I was frustrated that I was back in that same feeling. But every time I would go home, my drive home was about 30 minutes. If there was traffic, it could be up to 50 minutes. But, you know, we're listening to work. I was in a warehouse, listening to music, when I was at work, I was in a warehouse. So like, you know, you're kind of distracted all day. How much time do you get to settle. So instead of listening to music on the way home, I turn my radio off. And in turning my radio off, it lets my brain wander. And in this capacity, I started talking to myself. And I just started simply with like, hey, how was your day? It was okay. I didn't really like it, but it was, it's what it was. I know you don't like it, but tomorrow might be better. I hope so. I don't really want to do today again, and maybe, hopefully tomorrow will be better. And playing back and forth the side of the conversation. Being there for yourself, letting yourself express that, because I didn't really have anybody I could express my feelings to. I didn't have anyone that could listen to what I wanted to say, and I didn't feel comfortable sharing that with the people in my life. I didn't feel like the people in my life would be the support that I needed. They couldn't give me the ear that I really wanted. And then I would be dependent on them, honestly, as well. So doing this for myself was so rewarding, and it got me really comfortable to talking to myself. And the more I did this, I felt easier talking to myself. I felt more comfortable. Like I said, I started going to therapy around this time, and I started daydreaming again. I hadn't daydreamed in years, and I was going to make a video actually about this, but I think it just ties into this concept, is like, I entirely stopped daydreaming because I entirely stopped sitting with myself and being aware of myself. I was so focused on what I had to do next, what tomorrow was going to do, and then doing everything I had to get my shit done so then I could totally detach from reality, right? I would watch TV, I would watch movies, I would watch people stream on Twitch for hours on end because tomorrow was going to suck, and all I had was these few moments to just relax. And it was all about relaxing. It was all about detaching from all of the pain. But I never was actively with myself because of that. I was with these other people. So I never had a daydream, and I really never had active thoughts. So in doing this and going to therapy, I started talking to myself, I started daydreaming, and I started to meditate again. So I had done very few stints of meditation, nothing extensive, just like I would try it once. I heard it might be good for relieving stress, right? So I started to meditate. Now I meditate every single day. And I'm kind of up to like 25-minute periods. That's pretty normal for me now, every single day. When I was at work, I would do it on my lunch break, and doing it on lunch break was so incredibly healthy for me because I hated my job. I was so stressed out. So it felt like the whole day was just a drag. So I would go to my car and eat my lunch. I had a same thing every single day. It was part of my process to like do what I can for myself to get me through. So I had my same lunch every single day, smoothie and a protein bar. And then I put in my headphones and I meditate for 15 minutes at lunch every single day. And holy shit, did that remove so much stress and anxiety. It made me feel so energized and clean for the rest of the day. Anything that happened prior to that, I could totally push out of my body, and I could come in as if I was starting my day over. Again, that might sound like hyperbole, but that is truly how it felt. It felt like I had a clean slate. So then I would go home, and then, like I said, I'd have my drive home, so I'd let myself explore thoughts. I'd let myself talk to myself and work myself through. If I wasn't working, when I would be home, I give myself time to talk to myself, and I would meditate at home in the evening. I light incense, I sit there, I meditate, the same exact process, but usually longer at home because I'm not restricted by a lunch break. So this meditation became super big for me too. And in every single way I was there talking to myself, I was listening to myself, I became available, I became sympathetic, I became my own best friend. That's so beautiful, it's gonna make me cry. But I did. And now I'm so comfortable with myself that I talk to myself all day. If I'm not watching TV, if I'm not doing XYZ, I just sit there, I let myself wander, and then I just start talking to myself. I work through my fears and my stress and my anxiety. I brainstorm for new videos. I can clearly think about, like, what do I want to do today? And I have the awareness. I was just talking to this with my therapist, V, how when I watch something now, in the past I was so detached. I would sit there and watch something for all day. Like I could just watch movies all day and there goes my entire day. No exaggeration in that at all. And now I watch something and I get the voice in my head of like, you could probably be doing something else, or this isn't satisfying. And I stop. And that's crazy because I never had that. I never had that. This detachment was so ingrained in me. I learned it through my family, right? And it was just this thing to not have to focus on now. But because I've spent so much time focusing on now, being supportive of myself, not criticizing myself, not bringing myself down, right? Like I have the awareness of when to stop, of when to move, of when to rest, and do it in the capacity that feels good for me, not forcing myself. It feels innate. It feels natural. And like I said, I was talking to V about this, and I think when I talk, sometimes it's like it's kind of upper level to some capacity. Maybe it's not always 100% grounded, even though I try to for these videos. But I was talking to her about this and like how like, you know, I was talking to myself when I was playing both sides of the conversation in the past. And she made the succinct kind of, you know, coalesced my ideas basically to like the idea of, yeah, when you're talking and playing both sides, you're working against yourself, right? You're talking to yourself, which is innately good, but like you're talking to yourself to dissuade yourself, right? You're talking to yourself to move you out of a cycle, to move you out of doing something. You're not your support system. You're basically your antithesis. You're not your best friend. You're your enemy. And once you really start being sympathetic and understanding, and you change that other voice, then you become your best friend. Then you listen, then you enjoy spending time with yourself. I love being alone. I mean, I've always liked being alone. I'm an introvert, if you couldn't tell. But it was all out of insecurity in the past, right? Like as a little kid, I was so nervous to hang out with people. I remember being like 4 or 5. Okay, maybe I was 6 or 7, I don't remember. But I remember like I wanted to hang out with some of my friends and I was so anxious and nervous to call them. So I wanted my mom to call them for me to hang out with them. I've always been nervous. And, you know, that feeling, that anxiety, that self-judgment that I'm not good enough is starting to go away. And I feel proud of myself and I feel confident. And as much as I said, as I talk to myself when I leave and I look in that mirror, I thank myself. I tell myself that I'm attractive. I tell myself that I'm proud of myself, that I'm worthy, that I can do anything that I want to. And it's so rewarding, and it means so much more coming from me than it means coming from anyone else. Because I'm not looking for the validation from other people, because I give it to me. It comes from me, it stays in me, it fills me up, it makes me feel bigger than I ever felt before. Because now I'm 2 people. I'm not one person. So, how I feel today is amazing. And, you know, I think I'm an introvert, right? I'm looking at the world from in my house looking outside, right? This isn't to say that if you're extroverted and you like talking to people all the time, that is inherently a problem. It doesn't mean that you might not like socializing and experiencing life with other people. That is good. But whether you're inside looking out or outside looking in, you're there in both situations. And even if you have somebody to distract you, at the end of the day, you're still the one that matters the most. You're still the one who's there with you in the dark moments, in the happy moments, in the in-betweens. And until you start looking at yourself and being there for yourself, you're not going to be happy. Whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, an omnivert, it doesn't matter. So, all this to say is, don't run from yourself. Be available for yourself. Be your best friend. Yeah. So until next time, everybody. Love you. Bye.